Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic tonight. Let's get after it. Those of you who work night shifts, what's the scariest thing you've ever experienced? Not safe for work. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. When I was stationed on an aircraft carrier in Japan some years ago, I worked the night shift. Scariest moment was when I was down on the mess decks and all of a sudden the entire ship went dark and stopped moving. Next thing I know, the skipper, XO, RO, and a bunch of officers come sprinting down towards the reactor spaces. I was brand new on board and was absolutely terrified. Worked many overnight shifts in a hotel. Standout nights are when a guy tried to kill himself in the stairwell by stabbing himself in the eyes. Heard a bunch of screaming and found this guy bleeding all over the place. Another time I thwarted a robbery. It was emotionally kind of intense, but not very dramatic to tell. Countless prostitutes, people on the run, and even a couple of dead people, but those are usually found during the day when housekeeping makes their rounds. I leave for work around 2:30 a.m. every morning. One morning I step out my front door, not really paying attention. I sensed a presence and I heard something shuffling. I look up and a deer is close enough to me that I could touch it if I wanted to. I yell out in fear. Didn't realize it was a deer at first, and the deer runs off. Made for a funny story when I got into work. I was working for a web hosting company. My shift was 6 p.m. to 3 a.m. I lived in a rural part of Oklahoma, about 20 miles east of Oklahoma City. Most of the houses are farms, and they're separated usually by acres, if not miles of farmland between houses. One night in September, I was driving home exhausted because I had just worked overtime and it was about 3:30 in the morning. I turned down a road that I don't normally take because I figured, why not? It's in the country. So as I get further away from the city, the darker and more wooded the road gets. I paid no attention as I was tired. I have my headlights on high, and I turned down a road headed toward my house. After a while, I feel like I've been driving for a really long time down this road with no intersection, but I keep going anyway. All of a sudden, I see something in the road, so I stop and look, and it's an entire tree branch, huge branch. Not one I could have just run over or avoided. Not even thinking logically like, there hasn't been any storms or wind, why is there a tree in the road? I proceed to get out of my car and start trying to move this branch. Then I think I hear something, so I turn the car off and listen. It's someone whistling in the woods, on land that has no house for miles. I start to get into my car quietly, and the whistling stops. I hear footsteps stomping and getting louder. I turned that effing car on and threw it in reverse and slammed the gas down until I got back to the main road. Still haven't been back down that road. I'm sure you're looking for answers like about creepy things we've seen going in or leaving, but hands down the scariest thing I've experienced is my drive home at like 4 to 5 12s in a row. My drive is about 45 minutes and I have a lot of interstate. I can't really describe how scary it is when your brain goes, wow, I'm coming up on that car really fast. I should probably slow down. Now. Holy shit, slow down. That's not including the days your eyes refuse to stay open, or you get somewhere and realize you have no memory of doing it. I don't know, man. Being tired and operating a vehicle while tired is just really scary. Think about your local interstate or freeway and how many trucks and cars and vehicles you see on it. And imagine how many of those people feel just like this. 3 a.m. on the general medicine ward. 65-year-old dude leaves his room and walks to the kitchenette to get some water. Walking back to his room, he stops and makes penetrating eye contact with all of us at the nursing station. He sneezes and catastrophically tears his esophageal varices and begins to spout blood out of his mouth like a fire hydrant. We were able to slam him with Midas before he drowned in his own blood, but I will never not remember his look of desperation. Terrifying. This wasn't scary, just hilarious and bizarre. I worked as a night auditor at a small 60-room hotel off the interstate. So one night I'm sitting at the desk doing the paperwork and I see a car make a turn off the road into the parking lot of the doctor's office next door. Except the car didn't actually turn into the parking lot so much as turn into the ditch alongside of the parking lot, going about 15 miles per hour, and proceeds to yeehaw up into the parking lot. Car then drives over the buildings and the lights go off. I watch for about maybe half an hour. When the car's lights come back on and the car proceeds to turn around and drive off the parking lot, down the 15-foot high embankment and into our parking lot, then disappears around the building. Another 20 minutes and a middle-aged woman comes into the lobby and proceeds to check into her room while trying very, very hard to pretend she is not shit-faced drunk. I'm not actually sure where she parked because I didn't see her car when I left in the morning, but I cannot imagine it was in good shape. I hope she took the rental insurance. I used to clean office buildings after hours. One night, I head out to the back to take out the trash of one of the buildings I cleaned regularly, and as I finish tossing the bag in the dumpster and turn around, I see not 2 feet behind me is a man dressed head to toe in a ninja suit, complete with one of those straight, single-edged Japanese sword, a tanto. This guy, without a sound and very quickly, snuck right up on me and was just standing there, hand on the blade at his back, staring at me. Confused and slightly unsure if I was about to be murdered, I let out a soft, "What the f-?" The urban ninja then proceeds to Naruto run around my car a couple times, which was parked out back nearby, and then disappeared into the night, never to be seen again. I survived. I was a receptionist at a golf club, and one night, starting my shift, a couple of suspicious-looking guys, I live in Mexico, so it's safe to assume they were drug lord sons, came and purchased a day ticket. They were there for the whole day playing golf, drinking, and so on, not causing any trouble. Another frequent customer, 50 male, started hanging out with them and purchasing drinks for them. Long story short, at the end of the shift, me and my friend, 19 female, were closing with the 3 guys, drunk AF, arrived to see if I could change some cash. We did not process any cash transactions. However, one of the young guys started asking about his money and started accusing the 3rd guy to have stolen it. While I sent my friend to call security, they suddenly started beating the shit out of the older guy. They just tossed him to the ground and beat him up severely until some maintenance guys just took them off. Then he grabbed his bag and found the money. They left and never came back again. The beaten guy never pressed charges, so not sure if he was actually trying to rob them. A lot of that seems a little sketchy, so I don't know what to make of that situation, but somebody was probably doing something wrong, and then nobody went. I'm a commercial diver. On a night shift a few years ago, we were out on an urgent repair job in NW, Australia, so 24/7 ops until it was repaired. Usually, night shift is fine, just like day in black water, so no difference. I was in my dive rigging up on the collar for install and felt something hit me hard and knock me over. Turn around, nothing, tell the dive supervisor, and we decide to continue. About 5 minutes later, saw what knocked me over. A massive hammerhead shark, 4 to 5 meters. They get attracted to electromagnetic fields, and we're lit up with communication in the helmet and video systems. We called the dive, then went up the way. It was way worse, couldn't see anything, but would come out of nowhere, swim directly towards us, then, at the last moment, turn away. Felt very helpless, and even though hammerheads are not the most dangerous shark, when they're swimming directly at you at night, 50 kilometers from land, it's enough. Fell asleep riding a motorcycle. I was tired, but I figured 30-minute ride to home shouldn't be a problem. Long story short, I blacked out on the motorcycle, running at least 65 to 70 miles per hour. Next thing I know, I'm facing down, looking at the fuel tank of my motorcycle still running at high speed. I don't know how long I'd been out, maybe just a few seconds, but that's enough to scare me. If I passed out a few more seconds, maybe I wouldn't even be able to be here typing this story. After this incident, I always grab a cup of coffee before departing and town hop back to home if I felt tired. I worked at a gas station on night shift for 3 weeks. A car that was being chased by police crashed into one of the pumps, took out another pump, and that effing mess came in through the front of the store. The driver effing somehow managed to get out of the now on fire car and store and was still able to make an attempt at running away on foot. Obviously, it was just a layoff for every employee because the store was destroyed. I was welcomed to return to work, just never did because I found something with a bit less risk and paid better, LMAO. I was working for a local gas station in the town I used to live in. I was on the closing shift and was by myself. At the time, I was only 20 and also a female. A customer had come in and purchased some items from me, and he was making suggestive comments about my body. I tried to ignore them and played him off in saying I have a boyfriend and I'm not interested. So I'm closing up the shop and it's about 12:30 a.m. and I lock the doors to wait for my ride. I'm standing by the light pole when I see a figure getting closer to me from across the field. I started to freak out and called my ride several times to see when they would get there, but surprisingly, no answer. The dude came up to me, and I recognized who it was. My heart literally stopped. He tried to touch, but luckily I had my knife on me, and I started screaming and pointing it at him. He finally ran off after I almost stabbed him. One of the scariest moments in my life right there. I ended up not showing up to work the following day and tried to quit. They wouldn't accept me quitting, and I ended up getting moved to the store closest to my place. It was a wild ride. I was a milkman during college. This was before cell phones. 2 a.m., I'm adjusting the load in the truck on an elementary campus, and a huge mountain lion was walking from my truck to the school. I stared for a few minutes and concluded nobody would believe me. No kids were harmed the next day, so it must have moved on. On another night, I ran up to the house. I had the rural farm route. This house has one of the most attractive women I've ever encountered while I was doing the job. Hands down movie star beauty and completely natural and down to earth. The light was on, which was weird. I get to the door and it swings open, and a fully naked man was about to come out the door. I announced myself, dropped the milk, and ran. Clearly, I was 5 minutes too late because the lady of the house was somewhere in the dark, waiting for him, I presume also naked. As one of the older people in my job, I can make this joke without feeling bad. You said you were a milkman in college and there were no cell phones? No kidding. There probably wasn't even color TV then. Who's a milkman? When I was 17, I worked the midnight shift at a convenience store in rural West Texas. Except for weekends, no one ever came in after 1. Farmers and early risers started coming in about 5:30 in the morning for coffee and breakfast items. My job overnight was basically to clean the store and start cooking food for the next day, plus run the cash register if anyone did come in. One night about 2 in the morning, a couple guys came in and started walking up and down the aisles. I put down my mop and went behind the counter by the cash register. I finally asked them if I could help them find anything. I was already nervous. One of them replied that they wanted directions to Amarillo, the closest city in my area. I gave them directions and they left. About half an hour later, I opened the back door to take out the trash. The same 2 guys were parked in the alley behind the store. When I came out, they drove off. I was terrified the rest of the night. I've always believed that they were just waiting to come back in and rob the place. And when the back door opened, it startled them enough to get out of there. I was only 17, and that night scared me. I used to clean up a factory at night. We were a small team mainly focused on restrooms, break rooms, and offices. This included changing trash bags. Also note, the buildings we cleaned were pretty much right by the woods. One of my coworkers was taking trash out and saw that a young bear had climbed into a trash compactor. He ran back in, sheet white, and grabbed a broomstick to bang on the door. At first I didn't believe him, but I went along with it in case he was serious. Then he showed me the footprints later. He wasn't effing with me. I was an 18-year-old girl alone for a moment while my manager went out to get something, and there was an abusive husband with his terrified wife in the store. He was on hair-trigger rage, yelling at her in sporadic jumps. She would recoil and flinch and speak only when spoken to. He stomped to the counter where I was and treated me exactly the same, talking down to me like I was the dumbest piece of shit he's ever met in his life, raising his voice, slamming his fist down on the desk, interrupting me, not allowing me to answer beyond yes or no. The wife was behind him. Her face was just pale and frozen, and her eyes were gone. Her mind was not in this world right now, and I was just his next target. He was like 6'3" and huge. Me and the wife were both pretty small, and just becoming smaller and smaller every time he raged out. When I started looking around to see if there were any other customers, managers, any people around, he said, "Stop looking around and look at me when I'm talking to you." I was shaking, and really thought he might hurt me. Luckily, he just slammed his fist down one more time, sighed, and stomped out of the building. The wife followed him behind, and out into the parking lot, he started screaming and berating her, just short of hitting her and raising his hand at her responses, but not actually hitting, and they drove away. Nothing actually happened, but these sort of very human and very common events in the world are what really terrify me. Not just the outright violence and gore, this kind of psychological fear that people impose on others, the invisible marks left behind. I was so scared for myself, but also for her, what might happen afterwards, in private.